Rodrigo did a great sales pitch on BYD, and I'll have that on my front page as well, um, as I sort of talk about the things that have happened in the Australian market. Um, just a bit of context. Oh, hang on. Let's see. Oh, cool. Just a bit of context. On myself, I'm the director for a state of Victoria, for the Australian Electric Vehicle Owners Association. Um, we're basically one of the oldest electric vehicle supporters and advocates, having been around for nearly 52 years now. So back in the day, it was all about converting ICE vehicles into EVs, and then all these EVs came along. Along the side, I run a small business, helping governments and others into adoption of EVs, and I've accidentally become a journalist covering the electric vehicle industry, particularly the Chinese car brands over the last 4 or 5 years. And I've been fortunate enough to visit China in the last 12 months, probably about 3 times now. This picture you see is from the first time I visited back in June with a company called Zeekr that Geely owned. Um, but prior to that, I helped BYD launch a couple of cars in Australia, just from a accidental media point of view, just so they can get some publicity when nobody else was listening. Um, and now they are pretty much becoming anyone that wants to buy a car or any sort of electrified vehicle, they're one of the main brands that people consider. So a lot's changed in 2.5 years that they've been around. Australian Electric Vehicle Association, we have over 1,800 members, originally, as I mentioned, formed in 1973. Um, and we go around Australia advocating. We have, in Australia, it's a very funny situation. I guess similar to the US in some ways. We have 8 states and territories, and it's like basically fighting 8 different countries at the same time to get the same sort of change towards EV adoption. The good thing with the electric vehicle associations, we've got branches in all states and territories, and we understand on the ground what's going on. So I represent Victoria, which is a southeastern state in the city of Melbourne. But we've got events and we support large events. We've just had the big Everything Electric show in Sydney last month, which is a big sort of movement from the UK. They had 31,000 people attend it across 3 days with 6,000 test drives of EVs. Phenomenal stuff, which, 2 years ago, everyone would have laughed. Why do such a thing? But it's becoming a bit of a movement, and AEVA is part of that. Looking at sort of the EV trajectory that we've had in Australia, it's been a very slow start over the last, let's just say, up until 2.5 years ago. It was a very slow start. The only sort of companies that was getting some runs on the board were Tesla. And that was just with their Model 3 mainly. I mean, Tesla saw Australia as one of the early markets with Roadster, Model S, Model X, and then Model 3. And then BYD entered before Tesla could bring in the Model Y, and things started to change a little bit. I'll touch on charging infrastructure a little bit later on, but we now have this snapshot was taken sort of at the end of last year. But as of the data should come out shortly, we are probably another 15,000 vehicles on top of that now. So we would be approaching close to well, over 260,000 pure battery electric vehicles. Plug-in hybrids are not included in this data, but plug-in hybrids have had um, there was only one main model that was selling, the Mitsubishi Outlander. But since BYD has officially launched plug-in hybrids probably halfway through last year, things have changed quite dramatically. And they are averaging between 1,500 and 2,500 plug-in hybrids a month now. Not sure if that momentum will continue because there's some taxation that's come in that previously, up until the end of March, battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids were had exemption on fringe benefit tax, which saves people who work quite a bit of money every year if you don't have to pay fringe benefit tax on a car. But plug-in hybrids are no longer part of it. So it will be interesting to see how that transition happens. But we're progressing well. Just very quickly on this chart again. Um, Prior to 2022, we had a government, or some people like to call it, the lost decade. We had a decade of consecutive governments in Australia that were basically anti-EV. In many ways, to our Prime Minister coming in and saying publicly, electric vehicles will ruin Australian owners' weekend. They can't tow. They can't do any off-roading. You won't be able to tow your boat on the weekend or your caravan. So a lot of misinformation was put out there. But that's finally changed over the last 3 years, and we're actually about to go into an election in about 4 or 5 weeks' time. So fingers crossed we continue this momentum. Looking quickly at the sort of the sales of EVs. As I mentioned last year, we had Tesla played a big role, BYD's up there as well. MG is starting to get some good traction. Surprisingly, the European car makers, particularly BMW, has done a pretty good job. It's really interesting, like expensive vehicles that are electrified. It's more of a fashion statement now in Australia. So a lot of luxury car buyers are sort of leaning towards more cleaner, quieter, more efficient electric mobility. There's Polestar, Geely owned. One of the things we don't see on this, the Koreans are not doing too bad, the Kias and the Hyundais, but one of the things we don't see on this chart is many Japanese cars at all. They're just non-existent. Toyota did launch their BZ4X and Subaru launched the Solterra, but it's interesting. Basically, uh, the second half of 2024 was a lot more electric vehicle brands entering from China. We have no import tariffs of any sort on any main type of vehicles. So that's a good thing. So they've seen the Australian market as one of the key markets to enter. BYD is really ramping things up. This year alone, in January, that we now have a car that starts under 30,000 Australian dollars. So we have electric vehicles in our market that are cheaper than Toyota Corolla hybrids, which, 2 years ago was unheard of. So there's a couple of cars that start under sort of $35,000, and a Toyota Corolla hybrid is about $36,000. The same thing applies in the very, very popular SUV segment. So we have a fair few electric vehicles, mainly from the Chinese brands, including BYD, that are priced under $45,000, and a Toyota RAV4 hybrid is $47,000. So things are starting to get, EVs are today cheaper than ICE vehicles in main segments. One segment that's quite unique in some ways to Australia and some other markets is the light pickup truck segment. We don't have a lot of, we call them utes or utility vehicles. We don't have a lot of utes at the moment. BYD did launch their Shark 6, which is obviously a plug-in hybrid, but it's really, really elevated, not only BYD's brand, but just the whole electric ute thing, because it says all the things that the Prime Minister said won't happen. Electric vehicles can't tow. It can do a lot of other things. So that's really, really positive. This photo was taken when BYD first launched in Brisbane, one of the cities up in north part of Australia. Chinese vehicles, I think we sort of understand, the global expansion and the path that they're on. This photo was taken at the Ningbo International Speedway. Amazing place for anyone that gets a chance to visit it. But they're doing quite a lot of things. They're looking at bringing a lot of models to the market. They're doing a lot of strategic partnerships. They're creating more competition. And the quality and Servicing is, still improving, but the quality of vehicles is definitely on par with the Japanese, Koreans, and others as well. So quite an interesting time we're seeing, and I don't think a lot of the traditional automakers today understand the implications of what's happening. Um, Looking at some of the new models that are sort of launching into the market, recently BYD launched their Sea Lion 7, sort of the mid-sized SUV, quite a popular segment. We have the new Model Y coming. Zeekr will launch their 7X in the second half of the year. Still claimed to be the fastest charging car in the world. In Australia, we don't have many chargers that can charge at those speeds. But they're claiming, well, that it's been tested around 480, 500 kilowatts peak charging speeds. Would be lucky with our Tesla supercharger network, which is the most reliable network, um, if to be getting 250 kilowatts as well. So that's quite interesting. I did find Rodrigo's insights quite valuable, that Volvo is doing quite a bit over there. Um, I will be visiting China again next month, or sorry, this month with the Shanghai Auto Show. And my goal is to talk to a whole lot of car makers and say, why aren't you bringing your charging infrastructure outside of China to other markets to really supercharge adoption if charging is one of the main concerns that most owners and potential buyers have. New models once again. Geely's just launched the EX5. Geely's going to do some big things. I was there at the Ningbo Speedway again in November. Great car, lots of affordable quality and tech-focused vehicles that they're bringing in. MG this week, coming weekend, is about to launch that MG ES5 at a EV show, and XPeng will also be launching the X9 later this year, plus many, many more cars on here. Um, Charging infrastructure very quickly. We've seen growth in that space. Like Rodrigo mentioned, a lot of it is driven by private infrastructure. Um, Having said that, governments, certain states, as I mentioned earlier, we're basically like 8 countries in one. Some states are doing better than others. New South Wales, which is the largest state, has had a very good energy minister who you was on the opposite side that weren't friendly with EVs, but in the state they were doing some pretty good. He's a very smart guy. He pushed for a lot of sort of rebates and other things to supercharge their fast charging network, and it's starting to pay quite a bit of dividend. Other states are catching up. So we have got over 1,100 fast charging sites with 3,405 DC plugs. In total, we have close to 10,000 ports in the country now, AC and DC, and that's going to increase rapidly. I have the fortune of helping many international companies launch in Australia, and I know there's a lot of charging companies that are very ready to push the doors open. So that's an exciting time, and if anyone else sees international companies that are interested in setting up charging networks in our respective countries, please listen to them and support them in any possible way. And I think that's it. So I'll stop quickly. Any questions?
I will jump in, Riz. So you're going to the Shanghai Auto Show. Is anybody else on the call going to that show? Um, I'd encourage you when you're there to remind everybody at the show, Riz, that we've got GEVA. We're obviously a worldwide group, and
Yeah.
let everybody there know about GEVA. So
I would love to, because I think even just today, just seeing the similarities between, what's happening in Australia,
yeah,
plus all the other meetings that we've had in the past, there's so many different similarities, so much fun going around, and anything we can do collaboratively just to make sure that people don't feel alone
yeah.
in this global journey, I'll aim to do that.